Collins English for Exams. Grammar for IELTS. Copyright HarperCollins Publishers 2012. Track 1.
Where do you live?
I come from Moscow. I have lived there for 6 years. My family moved from the countryside when I was 12 years old.
Do you still live with your family?
Yes, I do. I live with my parents and share a room with my brother. My brother still goes to school. He is only 8 years old.
Do you like Moscow?
Yes, I love Moscow. When I first arrived, I didn't like it much because it was so different. But I have grown accustomed to it. Now I know my way around and have lots of friends.
How has Moscow changed recently?
It has become more international and more exciting. In the last few years, about 10 new international restaurants have opened in my area alone, and I often eat in them now with my friends. I have lots of international friends who have come to study at the university in Moscow, and we often meet in the evenings.
Track 2.
What kinds of holidays do you like? What was the last place you visited on holiday? What kinds of transport do you use regularly? How long have you lived in your hometown? Have you travelled to many different places in your country?
Track 3.
What kinds of holidays do you like?
I like beach holidays because, well, I enjoy relaxing and I love the sun. I don't really like city breaks or activity holidays. They're too tiring for me. I work so hard that I like to just do nothing when I'm away. I usually go to Italy on holiday, which is really nice but quite expensive.
What was the last place you visited on holiday?
I went to one of the Greek islands last year. I was there for 2 weeks. I flew there but took the boat back, which was a real treat. I love travelling by boat. When I was there, I saw a few sights and ate some of the local food, but mainly I just stayed by the pool and sunbathed.
What kinds of transport do you use regularly?
I live in a big city, Shanghai, and so I often use public transport. I go to work by bus, which usually takes about 30 minutes. Lots of people in Shanghai travel by bike, but I've never ridden a bicycle because I'm too scared. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I often visit my parents by train, but last week there was an accident, so I took the bus.
How long have you lived in your hometown?
I've lived here all my life. Although I've worked in lots of different cities, I've never stayed there for more than a few months. I was born in Shanghai and have lived here now for 21 years. I lived with my parents when I was younger, but now I've got a flat on my own in the city centre. It's not very big, but it suits me.
Have you travelled to many different places in your country?
Yes, I've travelled to lots of different cities in China. I've been to Beijing, Guangzhou, Nanjing, Harbin and Kunming. My favourite one was Beijing. I went there a couple of years ago and it was really fantastic. I didn't realise how cold it was in Beijing. I was amazed. Apparently it is really hot in the summer but really cold in the winter time. Unfortunately, I went in the winter.
Track 4. In today's programme, I'll continue examining the impact of fame on lifestyle, using the style icon Gloria Van Bronken as an example. Before becoming famous in the modelling industry, Gloria had lived in a small village and had never travelled outside her own country. She used to work in a clothes store and she enjoyed all the usual activities of a teenager in her free time. She'd been working in the clothes store for 2 years when a customer who represented a model agency spotted her and signed her up. By the time she was 21, Gloria had travelled round the world several times and had appeared on the cover of many international fashion magazines. Now, the impact of such drastic lifestyle changes can be very significant. Track 5. Hello there. How can I help you?
I'm going to do a presentation on Mary Shelley, and I'd like to get some books on her.
OK, the biographies are on the 3rd floor. I'll write the aisle number down for you.
Thanks. I might use the internet too and look for resources on there.
That's a good idea. If you're going to use the internet, have a look on the Great British Authors website.
Oh, thanks, I will. I haven't heard of that site before. Thanks very much for the information.
That's quite all right. Feel free to come and ask me any questions, and I will do my best to help. Track 6.
Hi, is this the Student Affairs office?
Yes, it is. I'm Carol. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm Andy. Well, I'm new at the university and I was told I needed to come here to complete my registration.
You're in the right place, yes.
Oh, great.
Firstly, do you know your way around the campus?
No, it's my first day. I'm going to explore later.
Well, hold on. I'll give you a map of the university. There
are some over there on the wall. I'll grab one.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Have you organised your tour around the main library?
No, not yet. I'm going to go to the library later to do it.
I'll do it for you here. There's a tour at 4:30 today. Shall I put you on that?
Yes, please, that'll be great. I'm going to complete the new student form later on today. Do I bring that to you?
You can't complete it yourself. You'll need to go to the main administration office as one of the staff members there needs to fill the form out for you. It's just by the main hall. You can't miss it. You can get a visa form from them too, but you'll need to send the confirmation yourself once you've completed the form.
I don't need a visa. so I should be okay with that, but thanks.
OK. Can I help you with anything else?
Yes, please. There's just so much to do, and I don't know where to go for some things. Could you help me?
Yes, of course. It's a bit daunting when it's all new.
Well, at the moment, I'm staying in a bed and breakfast. I left it a bit late to get some accommodation, but I'd like a place of my own. Do you know where I can find information about places I could rent?
Good job you asked. Lots of people go to the administrative department and then get sent back here to student affairs. Here's the latest list of accommodation.
Wow, that was easy. And where can I get information on my rental agreement?
Well, you need to find a place first before you get it checked, but I'll do it when you've found somewhere.
Great. I'm going to register with the doctor later on at the admin department. Do they also have information on the area?
You'll need to go to student support to get a doctor, not admin. They also have everything you need to know about the town. They're really helpful. The admin department is really only there for official things such as visa regulations, loans and paying for your course.
OK, great. Oh, there's so much to remember.
There certainly is. But once you're settled in, it will all be much easier. Good luck.
Thanks for your help.
Track 7.
Welcome to the programme, Bob Lamont. Now, you're going to talk to us about the online gaming industry. We've had many listeners, especially parents of young children, email questions about the future of the gaming industry and how it's going to develop.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to answer some of their questions. Firstly, it's important to remember that this is an industry that develops incredibly rapidly, and so it's difficult to make definite predictions. So, in terms of significant developments that people working in the industry are preparing for, the most interesting is the fact that the age group of gamers, people who play online and video games, will change dramatically. We predict that by 2020, the average age range will have shifted from teenagers to the over 50s. This is because, in the future, young people will be using new forms of entertainment, but those who are young now are more likely to continue using the forms of entertainment they are already used to in later life. By 2020, this age group will have been playing the same type of game for half their lives and are unlikely to change. The types of games will progress too, from the platform-based games we have now, which we expect people to be using until 2015, to 3D games towards the end of the decade. However, before everyone is using 3D games, there will be a period when networked games will become the dominant format. This is mostly to do with the technology available and the fact that gaming companies won't have invested enough money to make 3D cheap enough for the mass market until at least 2018. Now, as you would expect, the gaming market will spread so that by 2020, companies will have created a worldwide marketing strategy for every game, therefore reducing the need to create new games for different regional markets. This is different from today, where we see that the online gaming industry is much more focused on the region of Asia, and this is likely to continue for a few more years. One final point to mention here is the competition from other forms of entertainment. Over the next decade, very few forms of entertainment will be able to compete with the gaming industry. However, there is talk of movies becoming interactive in the future. This is a real threat. Tech companies will have developed the necessary technology for interactive movies by 2015, and this may attract gamers who like character-based games in large numbers.
Fascinating, Bob. I didn't realise it was such a complex business. Thank you very much for your insight into this fast move.
Track 8.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Museum of Technology. We'll be taking a tour around the 3 floors, which will last approximately 1 hour, and then after that you'll be able to explore the museum on your own. Now, let's begin with the Internet, past, present and future on the first floor. By this Friday, the exhibition will have been open for 2 weeks. It started on July the 10th and it'll continue for 3 more weeks, so make sure you see it today, otherwise it'll probably have finished by the time you think about coming back. The final day of the exhibition is the 31st of July. The most interesting part of this section of the museum is about the Internet of the future. As you walk around, you'll see some large 3D touchscreens which show how we'll probably be using computers in about 5 years. These screens are definitely the best part of the display and something you must see. Moving on to the 3rd floor, the exhibition here is all about communicating via the Internet and it's called Social Networking. This exhibition is open throughout August from the 1st to the 30th. There is a fascinating part of the exhibition which is really worth seeing as it compares mobile phone and internet usage and shows how we'll be using social networking in the future. According to some scientists, by the middle of this century, we will have been participating in communication through social networking so much that mobile phones will have become obsolete. Make sure you take a look at the World Digital Map, which shows this visually, as it's quite amazing. The final exhibition is opening on the 4th floor and is dedicated to small handheld devices that companies will have introduced into our shops by the end of next year. In fact, you may have already seen some of them being advertised on TV. The name of this section is Portable Devices of the 21st Century, and it's starting tomorrow on July the 22nd and will be open until August the 20th. This part of the museum is about 6th sense technology. This technology will have been included in all portable devices like mobile phones and music players within 3 years or so. It also shows us examples of satellite tracking systems, which we will be using to help us plan our daily lives. These 2 sections are fascinating, and I recommend you spend some time viewing both. So, let's start the tour. If you could all follow me.
Track 9.
I'm going to talk about my grandmother on my father's side. She is quite little and has white hair and glasses. I have glasses too. We're the only people in the family that wear glasses. She's very old now and I don't get to see her very often. I think I see her maybe 2 or 3 times a year. She lives quite far away in the countryside. It takes us about 3 hours to travel there. Whenever we visit, she always gives sweets to me. She's important to me because she's so kind and so nice, and I really love her. She's definitely my favourite family member. I think I take after her in some ways. We laugh at the same things, and we both like reading. When we go and visit, we always go out walking in the fields and have a really lovely time. My dad always says that we're very similar. I'd like to be as wise as her when I'm older. I'd also like to have a similar life. She had a very successful career. She was a doctor and worked for charities. She was very much in love with my grandfather, which I think is lovely.
Track 10. Excuse me, my name's Simon and I'm a dietitian working here at the university. Would you mind if I asked you some questions? I'm doing a survey for the Students' Union on student eating habits.
Oh, really?
Yes, we're trying to find out how we can improve the meals served in the university canteens and cafes based on what students like to cook for themselves.
Right, well, I've a few minutes before class, so yes. I can answer some questions.
Oh, thanks a lot. Firstly, what's your name and what course are you studying?
I'm Jim, and I'm doing biology.
OK. Now, can you tell me how often you eat meat?
About once a week. The cost is really high these days, so I can't afford to eat much meat.
Right. And what about fish and vegetables?
I don't like fish, so that hardly features in my diet at all. But I often eat vegetables. In fact, both at lunchtime and for my evening meal, I usually make meals from vegetables as they're quick and easy.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Do you think we should have more vegetable dishes in the Students' Union canteens?
I think so, because price is a big factor for students deciding to be vegetarian. If the university served good quality vegetarian food, they could make it cheaper, and this might attract more students.
Yes, I see your point. Now, how would you evaluate your diet?
That's a good question. I know my diet contains far too much sugar. The problem is that I love fizzy drinks like Coke and lemonade. I'm pretty sure that that's where most of the sugar comes from. What I really have to do is to try to find a way to stop this and drink some kind of juice or water instead.
Yes, you're right. That's what a dietitian, nutritionist or doctor would recommend.
I know. At the moment, I don't drink enough water. On an average day, I only have a couple of glasses.
Track 11.
Last year, I went to a wonderful restaurant overlooking the river in my city, Marseille, with a group of friends. The special occasion was my friend's 21st birthday, and we decided to go out for dinner. We wanted to eat beef because this restaurant is famous for meat, but as we arrived late, they didn't have any beef left. Instead, we ate bouillabaisse, which is a kind of seafood stew containing fish and shellfish. I had a couple of glasses of orange juice. For dessert, we each had a slice of birthday cake, which the restaurant had made especially for my friend. The cake had 21 candles, and my friend blew them all out in one go, so she made many wishes for the future. We had so much fun that night.
Track 12.
I'm going to talk about an English dessert called trifle. This is a dish that people usually eat in summer, and it's been very popular since the 1950s. It's made from fruit, cake, custard and jelly, and we often eat it with some cream. Trifle is really easy to make because it doesn't actually need cooking. First of all, you cut up some cake into slices, and then you put the slices of cake into a bowl. Some people like to cover the cake in sherry, otherwise it can go a bit hard. Next, you need to chop up some fruit. Oh, but you can't use just any fruit. It must be berries such as strawberries, raspberries or blackberries. After covering the cake with berries, you need to make some jelly and pour this over the fruit. When the jelly has cooled, it's time to add custard. You can use a tin of custard, but it's better to make your own. People can always tell the difference. Finally, add the cream. It's best to only use a little cream because trifle is quite rich. And then put a few raspberries on the top for decoration. I love it because of the mix of fruit and sweet custard.
Track 13.
As part of this module on youth, today we are going to look at current youth initiatives in the UK, some of which are more successful than others, I must say. The last government spent a lot of money on setting up initiatives that sadly have been left in desperate need of funding since the new government has come into power. Firstly, volunteering schemes are incredibly successful in the UK. These schemes are cheap to run, which is a huge benefit. In addition to this, the schemes are community-based. This means that the benefits are spread widely throughout each local community. The uptake has doubled in the last 10 years, and I believe this is an area where more focus should be placed. Secondly, Sports clubs are a huge youth initiative, with more than 20,000 emerging in the last 10 years in England alone. Although the numbers are very positive, these schemes are expensive to staff. If these are to continue to flourish, this area will need a significant cash injection. Lastly, there are a certain number of drama clubs that have emerged in the last 10 years. Although it was thought that these would be hugely popular, they have actually attracted only small numbers of students. Moreover, they are costly, and finding a venue for such clubs has proved difficult, as many local halls are running at capacity. As a result of these factors, these clubs are not likely to continue in the long term. To conclude, as we can see, some of the schemes are flourishing, yet many are short of money and other essential resources. In order to enhance the youth experience, the government must identify new schemes which are cost-effective yet enjoyable to teens.
Track 14.
So, what other initiatives could the government focus on? Well, due to the success of the sports clubs, new open spaces initiatives are being discussed. For example, football tournaments in local playing fields or athletics days in local parks. This could regenerate local areas and renew interest in activities for young people. Staffing would still be necessary, although young people could take an active role in organising and managing competitions. This could cut down staff costs significantly. In addition to the Open Spaces scheme, there has been discussion of reinvigorating the Taste of Work scheme, which gives young people a chance to get work experience in a variety of jobs in their school holidays. However, this scheme has met with harsh criticism from some politicians, who think that it's a way of providing a free workforce by stealth. In fact, I think it is fair to say that this scheme will not see any renewed interest because of these criticisms. Lastly, the scheme that there has been a lot of talk about is the Outward Bound Activities courses, or OBAC for short. This has been successful in many other countries, such as Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. The activity courses give young people a chance to get out into the countryside and enjoy nature. As a result of this, they also give teens a chance to learn life skills and experience adventure on a broader scale.
Track 15. How has the place you live in changed recently?
Well, in my city, there is a lot more traffic than there used to be. This is because of the new business centre, which has brought a lot more people to the city for work. This has made the city richer than it was. In fact, that's the most significant difference. The city is not as poor as it was 10 years ago.
So, you're studying here in Sydney. How is your town or city different from Sydney?
There are quite a few differences, such as the shop opening hours. The shops in Tokyo stay open much later than those here in Sydney. Then there's the transport system, which is more efficient and convenient. But the weather is the same as here in Australia.
Is it a good place to live?
Yes, it's really nice. I think it's considerably better than other cities in my country because it's more modern. It's also got a lot of parks, which I really like, and this means that it's not nearly as crowded as some places.
Track 16.
I think our presentation should focus on why living in the countryside has become more attractive to families nowadays than in the past.
I'm not so sure. Although the statistics Professor Davies showed us in the lecture gave the impression that there are more families moving to the country now than at any time during the last 20 years, he also mentioned that there aren't as many available houses in suburban areas, so many families don't have as much choice as before.
Yes, Suzanne, you're right. Perhaps that's actually more important. People think that the same housing stock exists as in the past, but that's not true. How about we focus our presentation on the fact that the choice of location for families is not as wide as during the 1980s, and this is what is affecting the trend of moving to the countryside.
OK, I think you've thought about the presentation a lot more clearly than me.
Thanks.
I think Helen's right. We want Professor Davies to think that we have done as much research for the presentation as we could, and not only use the reading list.
Yes, you're right. Otherwise, our final grade won't be nearly as good as our last presentation, so we need to read as widely as possible.
Track 17.
So, Greg, Kirsty, have you done much research for our project yet?
I haven't done as much reading as I'd planned to, but I've got quite a lot of books and journal articles that might be relevant.
Good work, Greg. I think I might have worked out how we can approach the project and give it a more specific focus than the title that Dr. Jones suggested, which is too vague.
Oh, really? How's that?
Well, we know that the new 7 wonders of the world were chosen a few years ago, but I think that how they were chosen and what this says about people's relationships to their architectural and natural national heritage is far more interesting than just doing a project that describes what they are and why they were chosen. What do you think, Alison?
You know, I think you could be right there. Didn't Dr. Jones mention something in our last lecture about how many more people voted for some of the wonders than the total number of people in the country?
That did happen. In a sense, it wasn't really a voting system at all. It's more like a TV talent show. It wasn't nearly as scientific as political voting systems because people could vote as many times as they wanted, and it was all done via the internet, so it only applied to people with access to a computer. And most of the votes for the wonders came from the country's own citizens.
That's interesting. I think, therefore, that we can show how the modern choices were different from the original 7 wonders of the ancient world because the original wonders were chosen by travellers, while the latest list was chosen by people from the same country as the wonder itself. From this, we can analyse the choices and how having a building or site on this list could be more advantageous to some countries than others. For example, countries which rely less heavily than others on tourism may not have been nearly as interested in the whole competition as those who wanted to boost visitor numbers. Then we could compare this with how travellers chose the previous wonders.
OK, now I understand, and yes, I think it's a great idea. Let's do it.
Yes, I think that'll really give us an edge compared to the other students. It'll make the final project considerably more original. Remember, Dr. Jones isn't expecting much from us, given the result for our last project. But I'm just slightly worried that we might not have as much time as we'd like to do the reading.
I see what you mean. Well, why don't we do as much reading of these books and journals as we can, and then meet again on Friday to make a final decision on content?
That's a good idea, Alison.
Absolutely. Then we can make sure we won't read too much and we'll still have enough time for the actual project writing. Track 18. How can crime be prevented?
Crime prevention must start from education. If people are not raised well, then they might commit crimes in the future. It's the responsibility of both parents and schools to educate children in the difference between right and wrong. This could be done in special ethics classes in schools, and perhaps parenting classes might be a good idea for parents who are unsure of how to raise children with more moral values. These classes shouldn't be compulsory, though, as this might be too expensive and unnecessary. However, although all parents might not go, it could be useful for those who are struggling. More information could help these parents.
Track 19. Why do you think people become criminals? What do you think the role of prisons should be? Punishment or rehabilitation? What do you think is the best way to deal with juvenile crime? Do you think people commit crimes because of violence on TV or in video games? Is crime always linked to poverty? Track 20. Why do you think people become criminals?
Because life can be difficult for some people. Crime can present an easy way to get things they want in life. Even though people know they shouldn't do it, the temptation could be very strong, especially if they're in a desperate situation. Although they ought to work hard or get help, sometimes they just can't.
What do you think the role of prisons should be? Punishment or rehabilitation?
I think prisons should focus on rehabilitation more. This is because those prisoners will one day be back on the streets, and so education might make them better in society. Prisons ought to help solve the problem of crime. I think being in prison is punishment enough, and so while people are in prisons, there should be some kind of constructive effort to change their behaviour.
What do you think is the best way to deal with juvenile crime?
Young people must have role models. This might prevent some young people getting involved in crime in the first place. Parents have to take responsibility for their children too. In fact, I think parents should be fined if their children commit a crime. I think this might be quite a good answer, as children can't always know right or wrong without their parents telling them.
Do you think people commit crimes because of violence on TV or in video games?
No, I don't. People don't have to do what they see on a screen. People have their own minds and can tell the difference between reality or fiction. People can see violence on the news. It doesn't make everyone who watches the news a potential criminal. People who are influenced by games and TV in this way probably have an underlying problem.
Is crime always linked to poverty?
Not always. Although I think that some crime is because of poverty, there are other factors which we ought to consider. For example, plain greed, laziness, mental illness and personal problems could also contribute to some crimes. We can look at things like crimes of passion or fraud, which are not always committed due to poverty, as examples.
Track 21.
Hi everyone. So, let's get started on our essay. Mark, have you done the research from last week?
Well, yes and no. I was trying to follow up on the suggestions from the lecture, and I searched the library for books and journals, but I couldn't find anything relevant to our topic.
Well, maybe you were too late. We got the essay title 2 weeks ago, so other students might have taken out all the books already.
Yes, I guess so.
It doesn't sound likely to me. All the books couldn't have been taken out. There's lots of books about astronomy in the main library.
Well, there was one book, but I couldn't borrow it because it's a reference-only book.
We should have started this project earlier. What are we going to do now?
The other students must have been very keen to start. Well, don't worry. Why don't we just reserve the books we want? I found some articles we can start reading now, and then we'll be more focused for when the other students return the books we need.
Track 22. So, Abby, can Helen and I show you our presentation to see if you think it's okay?
Of course, no problem.
Thanks a lot. OK, first of all, we're going to show the explorers' route on the map here and explain what happened on the expedition by highlighting some key events.
Right.
And we think it's important to mention that the expedition started quite badly. You see, the original base camp had to be moved. The original plan was to start from the tree line at the bottom of the mountain, but the explorers couldn't set up camp there because of the rain, so they moved higher up.
The idea is to highlight the importance of planning in exploratory expeditions. The Robertson team should have known that they couldn't have started from the tree line in the rainy season.
Yes, they really should have checked that.
In the end, the camp was set up on the edge of the snow line. OK, so moving on. Joan Robertson and her team found several new plant species on the lower slopes of the peak, and when they were halfway up the mountain, they came across some fossils which they worked out were from dinosaurs.
How did they know the fossils were from dinosaurs? Surely they couldn't have identified them so easily whilst on the expedition.
But that's the important point. This team were not just explorers, but also scientists. In order to make the trip more useful, they took scientific equipment to analyse anything they found, so they were able to identify the dinosaur fossils correctly.
It's good to make this clear if your project is supposed to be about the importance of scientific expeditions rather than exploratory ones.
Absolutely.
So, am I right to think that the Robertson expedition took longer as a result of the research?
Well, they should have taken longer because they were conducting a lot of experiments, but modern technology enabled them to do the experiments and reach the summit in under 4 weeks. In fact, they arrived at the top on day 26 of the trip. Track 23.
Hi, Penny. Hi, Terry.
Hi.
How are you both getting on with your natural disaster essays? I can't believe we all chose the same subject of earthquakes. I found it really interesting.
Yes, it is interesting, Andrew, but I could have made the topic narrower. There is so much to cover. It's really hard to organise the information I've found.
But that just gives you more to write about. I'd rather have too much material than not enough. I think Andrew is right. I found the topic fascinating too.
Maybe. I'm not so sure, Terry. Andrew, how have you done on the statistics research? That's what you were researching when I last saw you.
It's been interesting, but I had to look really hard for relevant information.
But you found some in the end?
Yes, I've got lots of statistics on past earthquakes and where the plates are more unstable.
That's great. I've been working on plate movement. I think by adding this to my essay, I'll have a really good foundation of how earthquakes come about.
I was looking at future earthquake predictions, but I didn't find much information actually. I should have focused more on how earthquakes are scientifically identified and measured. I think that would have been more relevant.
That's a shame. Well, why don't we compare some of the information we've found? It might all give us some ideas of what to read next.
Well, it turns out that many earthquakes could have been predicted according to the frequency of past earthquakes in the area.
Really? Well, that's not what I found out at all. I think you should go back and check that.
I don't know. Maybe I should.
Well, my research looks particularly at how convergence and divergence of the plates causes movement of the Earth. We sometimes forget that the planet is not a still object, but actually it is constantly moving. This causes things like new seas, mountains, and earthquakes. The whole world is moving. Terry, didn't your research find anything?
Unfortunately not. I think I need to research another area, as I couldn't see any evidence of earthquakes being predictable.
Well, I can also show you what I've got, and maybe that will help.
Oh, thanks. Track 24.
Does globalization represent a change in the way people view the world? Should globalization be controlled by governments? Most global companies are from the West. Is this a good or a bad thing? Do you think that globalization helps us to understand different people and cultures?
Track 25.
How do you think globalization might change the world in the future?
I think that if globalisation continues to develop, young people of the future will have a different understanding of things like nationality and culture.
Has globalization caused young people to care less about their countries?
I don't think so. If globalisation had caused young people to care less about their countries, we wouldn't see so much national pride in sporting competitions like the Olympics or the World Cup.
What would you say to someone who thinks that globalization is ruining the world?
I would say that they should be more positive. If globalisation didn't exist, we wouldn't have so many opportunities for work or travel, and we wouldn't be able to buy so many different products.
Can globalization make the world a more equal place?
I think this depends on what you mean by equal. If people in a country have the same opportunities in life, then globalisation is good and can help the world. But this is not always what happens.
Track 26.
What are the main disadvantages of globalization?
In my opinion, the main disadvantages are for cultures which aren't particularly strong. I think globalisation could in fact destroy some small local cultures. When my parents were young, the local dialect in our town was spoken all the time, but now more and more people in the town are from other countries and our dialect isn't spoken so much. If globalization hadn't transformed the way people move around the world, our town wouldn't have changed so much, and we might still be using our local dialect.
Do you think globalization has made the world a better place?
Well, in many ways, yes. I think in general people have more knowledge about the world due to globalization. For example, if I hadn't studied in Australia, I wouldn't speak English as well as I do, and I wouldn't have lots of friends from around the world.
How has globalization changed the way we travel and communicate?
I think it has changed things greatly. The world is a much smaller place than it was, say, 50 years ago. If I wanted to go to the other side of the world, I could get there in a day. And that's incredible. And not only is it easier to travel, we can now communicate with people on the other side of the world instantly through things like virtual messaging and webcams. If we didn't have this kind of progress in travel and communication, we would know a lot less about other cultures, and I think that would be a pity.
How has globalization benefited people in your country?
It's made a really big difference to how people in my country see themselves in relation to other countries. And I think that people will see more benefits in the future if they continue to be open-minded about it.
What are the consequences of allowing large companies to sell their products all over the world?
I think it's great. I know some people think that it's negative, but I don't. I think that everyone should have the opportunity to grow their company. All companies started small, but if you make good products, people will buy them. If there had been strict laws against international trade, the world economy wouldn't have grown as much, and everyone would have suffered.
Track 27.
Well, my best friend once gave me some really good advice when I was younger. I used to worry a lot about my appearance when I was a teenager, and it made me feel unconfident. I often thought people were staring at me and thinking that I looked bad. Once, one of my classmates asked me where I'd bought my clothes, and I thought it was a criticism. My friend told me not to worry about the way I looked. She said that all teenagers felt that way and recommended concentrating on having fun instead. It was quite difficult, but I tried to focus more on studying and my hobbies. After a while, I felt better, and my parents said that I had changed and become more outgoing. I was really pleased with this, and as a result, my confidence increased even more. So, I think, yes, I would give this advice to other teenagers. Although it's difficult advice to follow, I think it can really help young people who are going through a hard time. It's really important to be positive and understand that this period of your life involves lots of changes in your personality, but that in the end you will feel fine.
Track 28.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my weekly show about fitness. Today, I want to talk about ways you can improve your fitness without having to join a gym or sports center. Now, first of all, it is important to decide what you want to achieve. Many people want to improve their health in general, but other people want to focus on losing weight. I use a combination of both strength building and weight loss exercise to maintain my fitness level, but I know a couple who go walking twice a week to maintain theirs. The most important thing is to do something you like. For example, martial arts, hiking, tennis, or water sports. These are all good as cardiovascular exercise and strength training. One excellent way is to join a local club because you will meet other people with the same interests as you. It is also important to keep up motivation levels, and exercising with other people can be a good way to do this. And don't forget about the local park. It is a great place to exercise for free. Sometimes parks provide a running track or other communal facilities, all of which are free to use.
Track 29.
Thank you for coming to this talk on the Australian Film Institute, or AFI as most of us know it. We pride ourselves on the work we have done over the last 50 years, and I hope to let you know how we will keep promoting and developing this great country's film industry. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of history about the AFI. Then I'll go on to tell you about the work we're involved in at the moment, and then tell you a little bit about what the future holds for the AFI. So, let's start at the beginning. 1958 is an important date in our history, as it was when the Institute was founded. Since then, we've been working continuously for the following purpose: to promote film and television in Australia. I think, however, our celebrated Film and Television Awards are what we at the AFI are most well known for, which do indeed fulfil our aims of promotion of the industry. In fact, we think these awards have also elevated the standards of Australian film since their inception in the 60s. We're incredibly proud of them. The awards became so popular that we expanded them. In 1986, TV categories were added to the list of prestigious awards we offered. The awards have grown in popularity and status over the years, and there is no doubt that we are one of the leading film and television award ceremonies in the country. We have just recently held our 50th anniversary, which took place at Melbourne's Princess Theatre. Some big names in the film and television industry were there, and it was a real celebration of success. Now, this leads me up to our present work and how we're going to...
Track 30.
My favourite book is called The Hunger Games. It was written by Suzanne Collins, I think, and it is a really good book. The story is set in North America, but at a time when things are very bad. It's a story of a terrible society which is separated into districts. A boy and girl from each district are sent to take part in the Hunger Games. These games are televised for everyone to see. The games are basically a fight to the death for the children taking part. The story follows a girl called Katniss, who is forced to take part in the games when she offers herself up instead of her sister. I like the story so much because it is very exciting. At first, I found it really horrifying, but the more I read it, the more I couldn't put the book down. I really came to like the main character too. She is so strong. I was recommended this book by some friends and it didn't disappoint me.
Track 31.
A film I saw recently which I particularly liked was Toy Story 3. It's the third of a trilogy of Toy Story films, and I think it's the best but saddest one. These films are made by Pixar, and they are cartoon films, but I think they are for adults as well as children. The film is about toys that get thrown out as their owner is too old to play with them anymore. They're given to a nursery school, but the nursery school children are horrible, and the toys are treated really badly. So the story follows their journey to get back to their original owner. The main characters in the film are Woody, who is voiced by Tom Hanks, and Buzz Lightyear. I like this film so much because the story and the animation are so good. I found that even though it's a cartoon, it was really easy to get involved in the characters and what was happening to them. I think I cried for the last half hour of the film, but it's an incredibly heartwarming film about love and friendship. I would recommend this film to anyone who enjoys both a laugh and a cry. I think this film would be loved by most people in the world.
Track 32. Are zoos cruel to animals?
I don't know. I think some zoos are cruel. For example, zoos that keep animals in small cages. But there are also zoos that give the animals space to move and look after them well. This, I think, is good. Zoos can also help protect endangered species, and this is a really great thing. There are some countries that have no laws to protect their animals. That's a real problem. So, overall, I don't think zoos are as bad as people think.
Do you think we could do more to protect our wildlife?
Yes, we could do a little more. I think many areas of rainforest which have been destroyed by industries really need to be rejuvenated. Lots of wildlife live there, and if they don't have these forests, they won't be able to survive. Gorillas, which are one of the most endangered rainforest species, are dying out rapidly.
Do you think hunting is justified?
I think hunting sometimes is a necessary thing, but I think hunting as a sport, when the main purpose is enjoyment, is a little cruel. We all need to eat, and traditional societies which don't have shops to buy food need to be able to hunt for the things they need. This is necessary for them to be able to live.
Track 33. Owls are divided into two groups, which are classified typical owls and barn owls. Barn owls, which are nocturnal, fly silently. Owls which are nomadic rear a great number of young. Long-eared owls which live in the north migrate to Europe for winter. Track 34. Hello everyone. As you know, this week's lectures are on wildlife in Britain, and today we're going to look at the barn owl, which is a common nocturnal creature around the British Isles. Now, if you have a look at page 3 of your handout, you will see an outline of a barn owl. Now, it looks like a harmless creature, but this actually couldn't be further from the truth. They may be relatively harmless to you and me, but to the British rodent, they are a killer. Now, why is this? Well, firstly, it has a lot to do with their swiftness and silence. Look, for example, at the wings, which can vary from 80 centimetres to 95 centimetres. That's almost a metre. Wings that large have a great deal of power. Now, most people think that beaks are probably the way most birds hunt. But these beaks, which are curved downwards, are not used to hunt prey. When owls hunt prey, they have two massive anatomical advantages. Firstly, their feathers, which have serrated edges, can separate from each other. This makes their flight absolutely silent, so they can approach their prey unnoticed. It is their claws which are used to catch prey. Once they are upon the prey, the extremely powerful claws go into action. So, you'll see they are not really as sweet as they look. Now, their habitats you'll find are generally... Track 35. In this module, we're going to be exploring the natural habitats that the planet Earth provides, starting with probably one of the most famous, rainforests. Now, rainforests are exactly that, forests which see a great amount of rain. The reason they are so important is that they provide excellent conditions for many species to survive in. Let's look at how this is by exploring exactly what the rainforest is made up of. Now, starting from the bottom of the rainforest, we can find the forest floor, or rather, we can't find it, as it is littered with leaves and branches which cover the ground. This area is a haven for creatures like spiders and all kinds of wildlife. Now, this forest floor occasionally has a shrub layer. This layer, which is only located near rivers, contains small trees and, well, shrubbery, as the name suggests. It is a popular area for all manner of amphibians. The next area within the rainforest is generally without light and extremely hot and damp. This area, which is called the understory, which by the way is all one word, under, story, is a popular home for creatures which dwell in the branches, like snakes, lizards, and sometimes even jaguars. The most well-known area, called the canopy, is populated by some birds and small insects. The canopy is basically the tree tops. It is the densely packed canopy that blocks the light to the lower areas of rainforest. Not much reaches above the canopy, but there are a few exceptional trees that climb much further into the sky. These trees grow in areas called emergent zones. These zones, which are a perfect environment for birds and other small creatures, lie at the very top of the rainforest, and individual trees can stretch up to 50 meters in the air. Now, as we can see, this means that rainforests have a multitude of unusual conditions, perfect for many creatures. But why are such conditions perfect? Well, let's go on to look further into the canopy.